We are now recording, and I'm going to be walking.
Hi, my name is Lauren Copeland, and this is my 544 presentation, my action research project. I want to thank you all for taking time out of your busy days and your planning periods to come and listen to my presentation. I'd like to keep questions at the end so we can go through everything, so just if you think of something, jot it down or try to keep it in your mind. So my project this semester was on response to intervention, investigating the effectiveness of more frequent formal progress monitoring. So my hypothesis was that daily progress monitoring through written reports on interventions used with each student in RTI would result in mastery of material and improved test scores. My independent variable was progress monitoring forms, and I brought one of those for you. So what I did is I created this form and made one for each student, and I wrote down observations of their behavior, just different things to kind of look and see how they were doing with how they were progressing with RTI. So I will go ahead and I will pass a couple of those around for you. And my dependent variable was student success in mastering the material, resulting in improved grades on tests, quizzes, classwork, and homework. So there's a lot of research on RTI. As everyone knows, RTI is something that's really come into the spotlight in the past couple of decades, and this is something that's really interested me ever since I started my student teaching. So lots of positive results have been yielded from students succeeding in a general education classroom when teachers have used tiered instruction. Studies show the success of RTI in the classroom in terms of improved comprehension and retention of material and increased collaboration between teachers and students that led to the design of the current study, which involved the fourth grade classroom. So some of the studies that I found really interested me in working in a fourth grade classroom, because it seemed that RTI was universal in working across all different grades and different curriculums. So a 2011 study by Alotaiba, Folson, Schneider, Landon, Skruvitz, Meadows, Lee, and Connor found that kindergartners improved in their letterboard identification through tiered instruction. So even when I was using a fourth grade classroom, there's even examples of RTI working in students as young as kindergarten. So a study on the effects of RTI and middle school students also showed positive gain in overcoming reading difficulties. So a lot of RTI research is focused in the area of improving students' reading comprehension. So this study showed significant gains in decoding, spelling, and fluency with students who received primary and secondary RTI interventions, and these improvements did not disappear over the course of the school year. And then this study I found was very interesting because there's a lot of studies coming out of more suburban schools, and this one was an urban school, finding positive results when planning tiered instruction and more collaboration between teachers, which reduced the number of inappropriate special education referrals. And that was a 2010-2011 study by Rinaldi, Apple, and Stewart. So I thought it was very interesting that they focus on an urban school and collaboration between teachers. As we all know, the fewer special education referrals we can get and the more we can do in the classroom, the better that is. So even though there's been a ton of research and a lot of positive results in RTI, there's still a lot more research that could be done. Research about RTI has been evolving, and there's many different roles in RTI research. Further research is needed in many different areas in order to ensure student success in the classroom. There's not a lot of research on average students, gifted students, and that's someplace that RTI can be very effective in helping those kids. So we need further research also in identifying different assessments that will help reduce the inappropriate special education referrals when tiered instruction will be more appropriate. So the setting for this study was in a mid-sized private Catholic institution in suburban St. Louis, Missouri. The school consists of all grade level students from infants through 12th grade. So the participants in the study consisted of a 4th grade math class. There were 15 students consisting of 8 girls and 7 boys between the ages of 9 and 10. And 5 of these students in this math class had a 504 plan allowing for accommodations in the classroom. And one of the things that is interesting about this class that I was working with is it's a 4th grade class, and the students are split into 2 sections. So before we even started the study, the students, and we did this in a math unit, were given a pretest, and they were split into two groups, a higher achieving math class and a lower achieving math class. So we were working with the lower achieving math class to see how that tiered instruction would help them to master that material. So all the students were given that pretest. It was scored out of 20 points. If they scored 15 points or lower, they were placed in this lower achieving math class. So that's kind of what I was talking about. Then the unit was a 4-week math unit on division, and they had various assignments throughout this unit. They did a lot of classwork, homework, there were quizzes every week, and then a test at the end. So what I passed around to you early was that progress monitoring form, and I included a copy here. And this is something that we did on a weekly basis. The teacher that worked with me, we sat together every week and we talked about our observations, what we saw, what was working with the interventions that we were using, what wasn't working, what were things that we could do to improve the students' success in the classroom. Some of the students were receiving Tier 3 instruction. They went to a tutoring assistance program after school. So this was something that was shared with the tutors and also with their parents, so that everyone could be involved in the learning process and help the students succeed. So we use these weeklies. This again is something that I created, but there are tons of forms that are out there. There's a lot of really great forms you could use for that. And this is kind of the basis we use to adjust or modify our interventions. Our Tier 2 interventions were small group instruction, peer group tutoring, one-on-one instruction, and then we also did some reinforcement activities using whiteboard, dry erase boards, and markers for that. So, and then again, the Tier 3 instruction was going to that tutor after school and having that additional instruction from them. So here's a look at the grade book over the 4 weeks. The students that have asterisks by their names are the students that were in the Tier 3 instruction or identified as having a 504 plan. So anything that's highlighted in yellow is going to be a cause for concern. So you can see we had anywhere from 15 to 8 points on the pretest. And if you look at the post-test, you can see that every single student grade increased by at least 2 percentage points. So working with the students each week, adjusting and modifying their modifying their RTI interventions really did help to them improve their understanding of the unit on division and in their overall scores. So even though some of the students still did struggle, we did see some of those yellows throughout the unit. All their scores did increase. And when we were seeing the yellows each week, the teacher and I would look and say, okay, this student was still struggling. What is something that we did? Was there a lot of talking going on in the small group instruction? Did we need to modify their groups? Did we need to approach it from a different perspective? So those are things that we were doing every week in the classroom, looking at how they were reacting to the things we were doing and what we could change to improve their chances for success that next week, and then preparing them for that overall test. So the findings in the study support the hypothesis that RTI interventions and formal progress monitoring forms help to increase student comprehension of material and improve test scores. These findings in the study were also consistent with other studies conducted on RTI research over the past couple decades. So I was really, really happy and surprised when I saw that my findings in my study were mirroring some of the findings in those studies I talked about earlier. It was really great to see it in action, that, oh my gosh, this was really working and something that we should be continuing. There were some limitations of this study. This was only a 4-week research project, and it was 1 unit. And so, yes, it was really great that there were those improvements over just that 1 unit, but collecting data for a longer period of time and really seeing this through would have been really beneficial in understanding how effective more monitoring was, more forms were, and more adjusting. And then in conclusion, there is, like I said earlier, further research needed in the use of RTI in reducing inappropriate special education referrals. It's necessary to ensure that all students, and not just students at risk for failure in the classroom, have the tools necessary to succeed. Continued collaboration between general and special education teachers, students, parents, and tutors is necessary to ensure the successful implementation of RTI in the future. And that is the end of my slideshow. I know I kind of threw a lot of information at you. Does anyone have any questions? Yeah.
How do you think your RTI strategies will carry on for subsequent units?
Well, I really liked how the teacher worked with the students and the things that she taught me in terms of how you need to be looking at the strategies and how you need to implement them. As a new teacher, I had never done it in a classroom before. I just observed it when I was doing my student teaching. So it's really something that's going to be important for me in every unit that I'm doing. And seeing how I can help all of my students. One of my classes was a class within a class at my student teaching. And they did a lot of the RTI with them, but it was kind of separated from the rest of the class. It was very much segmented. So trying to blend them all together and seeing how you can work with the whole group instead of just a little group inside another classroom. So I think it's something that I'm going to continue in anywhere, wherever I'm teaching. Yes?
What was the biggest challenge you encountered throughout this whole project?
That's a really good question. The biggest challenge that I encountered was working with a group of younger students and working in a subject area that is not my strong point. It was working, I'm certified in 8 through 12 English, so working in 4th grade math unit was very different for me, and it was a challenge that I really wanted to take on to say, hey, is this something that is really working and something that I'm not really comfortable with? It kind of pushed my boundaries. So even though, I understand divisionary things, but seeing how to teach it and how to help the students understand it was the biggest challenge for me, and then seeing how you could use those strategies that I've been learning about in class, put them into practice.
So you think that you could use the same strategies cross-curricular?
I think you definitely could, and I think you should. I don't think it should be just, say, for reading, or for math, or for I think it's something that you have to use with every subject. And one of the things that I liked about a lot of the studies that I found is they were talking about the collaboration. It's not just the teacher and the students. It's this teacher, if I'm teaching an English class and I'm using it in my classroom, but the student's also struggling in science or math, how do I work with that teacher so that student is succeeding in that class as well? So I think it really speaks to how important it is for everyone to be communicating, working towards that student's ultimate success in the classroom, no matter what the subject is.
How can you engage parents in this concept?
Well, I think it's really important for the parents to be engaged, because if they're not, there's no way for them to reinforce the skills they're learning in the classrooms at home. So that's one of the things that my teacher and I worked with that the monitoring form was keeping the parents up to date every week on the students' progress. This worked really well. This is what we are doing in the classroom. They responded really well. Look at the increase in their grades. Or this didn't work so well. Let's try this. Because if parents are not informed, they can't support you and they can't help their students. So keeping that communication open, even just a phone call or an email or calling them in if the student's really struggling. That way they know that you care and they're more willing to work with you. So something that takes a little bit more work on the teacher's end, but I think is really beneficial for the students in the long run.
Did you notice any resistance from the students to this?
The students were really great, and I don't know if I just had a really great class, but they all seemed to really want to learn. This was something that was new and exciting for them. And they really excelled in that small group instruction, even when they were tutoring one another. So if I was working with one group and my other teacher was working with another group, the kids would actually get together and talk with one another and try to help one another. So it was really encouraging and motivating to see them have that interaction with each other and that drive to want to succeed.
Excellent presentation.
Thank
Thank you so much
you.
for sharing.
Thank you very much for coming. Would you mind?
Yeah, let me make sure it recorded.